A lot of people don't realize that pest control is as old as it is, but it is one of the oldest industries. People have been trying to get rid of pests for as long as we have been around, which is a long time, right? My first experience in pest control, that was back before anybody was using digital contracts at all. So going door to door and getting people to fill out a literal carbon copy contracts, and we would write down their name and number and address. We'd even go so far as to write down their credit card on this piece of paper, which were then floating around in people's cars. Super secure. It's how it was done. So that's where it really all began in my mind, is we'll just do a digital contract process specifically for pest control.
Welcome to the CTRL ALT GAB podcast, where we sit down with tech founders to break down how they scale, pivot, and grow. I'm your host, Gabrielle Walthers. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the CTRL ALT GAB podcast. I am joined today by Scott Hunter. He is the founder of Pocomos. We're so excited to have him here with us today, learn from him, hear his stories and insights from his experience starting and scaling Pocomos to what it is today. So thank you so much, Scott, for joining us. We're so excited to have you.
It's great to be here. I'm excited. This is a new opportunity for us. We've done very little with podcasters. And in fact, I think this will probably be our first, which is exciting.
I love that. Well, we're happy to help you break into the podcasting world here with our show today. And we're so excited to dive into your company and your experience. We have not had a guest on the show so far that is in the pest control space. I am really excited to hear how SaaS offerings converge with pest control space and how you're able to revamp a very age-old industry, as long as, I guess, mouses have been around and such.
Yes.
Needing control. I think this is going to be such a unique conversation. So to kick things off, I'm really curious about the origin story of Pocomos and what led you to this specific space and this specific offering. And I'm sure you have roots in the pest control space. And so, walk us through the professional and personal convergence that led you to found Pocomos.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that. A lot of people don't realize that pest control is as old as it is, but it is one of the oldest industries. People have been trying to get rid of pests for as long as we have been around, which is a long time, right? So I had a cousin who recruited me to come sell pest control door to door for his company. And that was really like my first experience in pest control, is just going door to door and getting new customers, which is really ended up being the true origin for Pocomos, because that was back a few years. I don't know if I want to date myself so much, but that was back before anybody was using digital contracts at all in pest control. Even back then, DocuSign was relatively new. I come from a background of working on paper contracts, going door to door and getting people to actually fill out a literal, if you guys even remember, the carbon copy contracts you would have 3 sheets, one original and 2 carbon copies, and we would write down their name and number and address, all their stuff that they'd need for service. And then we'd even go so far as to write down their credit card, their expiration, all the details for payment on this piece of paper, which also had 3 copies, which were then floating around in people's cars, which,
secure,
super secure. It's how it was done. And it had been done that way for a long, long time, even when we came on the scene. But even from there, we would run into the issue as salespeople that we would, fill out these contracts. We would give one copy to the customer. We would take the other 2, the original and a yellow copy, back to the office, and we would turn those into the office. And from there, it was really just hoping that it would actually get serviced and that they would actually pay. And then if they did both those things, we would get paid as salespeople. But it was an unknown percentage of the time that did not happen. We did not get paid. We did all the work. Everybody wanted the service, and we did not get paid. And that was super frustrating for us as salespeople. And so that's where it really all began in my mind, is we'll just do a digital contract process specifically for pest control, which is, the contracts for pest control are unique. They're a little bit more complex and evolved. Like, it's not just a quick DocuSign. And so that was the original idea. And I had thought about that. I entered into information systems as a major while I was at university. And then while I was studying that and kind of thinking about this idea, I had a buddy who called me up and was like, "Hey, sell for my company, a pest control company. I know you sold before. Come sell with me. It'd be great. And we're doing everything digitally. You don't have to worry about paper contracts and all that." And I was like, "Tell me more about that. Actually, I am interested in the digital contracts." And he showed me what he was doing, which was he had a Google Doc They would create the contract, basically draw down a copy of a template that they had, fill out the details, and then have the customer sign like an art program, like a drawing program. They would put their signature on there, and then he would take that signature and put it into the Google Doc, and that way create a contract. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's not quite what I have in mind, but that is cool that you're doing that. But instead, we decided to forget the pest control company that he was working on and start working on Pocomos. And that was the first thing we built, was the digital contract. And then from there, we started just building out more and more. We wanted to integrate with some existing softwares that were already in the pest control space, but this was before really the age of APIs, or connectivity has really increased over the last 15 years. And we reached out to, all the big players at the time. They all kind of said, go away, you stupid college kids. We don't want to talk to you, which in retrospect might have been fair, but we were both frustrated and offended, and decided we would just start building out all the tools ourselves. So we started into full operations. We built out routing. We built out job completion, which includes chemical tracking and things for pest control, all the safety reporting, all of the billing, the invoicing, the customer portal. We just, built, even went so far as to build all the tools that we would have wanted as door-to-door salespeople back in the day. So we do lead tracking, which consists of putting down pins on houses that you talk to, and a disposition of what happened there. They were interested, they're not interested, they never want to talk to a salesperson ever again, whatever the case might be. That can all be tracked. And that's some of the actual original stuff that we built in Pocomos. And all of that was new to pest control. It was pretty revolutionary at the time. Starting with the digital contracts, nobody had that at the time. And then into a built-in door-to-door module. A lot of companies do door-to-door, and nobody had anything that was built into the software for it. And so that was kind of our way into the industry. It was a major differentiator. It was also, of course, an updated UI and much better customer experience for anybody that was using the software. And those few advantages early on really set us apart and allowed us to get probably our first 100 companies on. They were kind of clawing to get on. It was a lot easier than ever, probably easier then even than now to get customers on, just because we had so many game-changing advantages for the pest control industry.
Yeah, what a unique origin story. I think it's so interesting that last minute pivot with you and your business partner to move away from your original goal and really change a lot of what you undertook. I think a lot of the pieces, and this is good for our listeners as well, what about your offering is use case wise really niche for solving pest control issues beyond those? Because when I hear like digital documents and contracts and signing and all of those pieces, there's a lot of companies that now are in that digital contract space. And so with regard to your SaaS offering specifically for pest control companies, what is it about their unique needs that Pocomos is able to fill well,
Sure.
beyond just, anyone that needs a digital contract?
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes really in the flow and the advancement of the services. So in pest control, typically what you're doing is you're signing up for a recurring service. It's going to be on a quarterly basis, or whatever the case might be. It's going to be on a recurring basis where those jobs need to be created, and they need to be both part of the contract and created as part of the customer profile. So that alone was the first thing that we did, is tied those two together. So when you create a contract, it's one process. And that's actually another thing that separates us from other pieces of software, where you would have to typically create a customer, and then to the customer you would add a job, and to the customer you would add a contract, and all of that would be done as separate tasks effectively when you're trying to add a customer. We created it such that it's all tied together. So when you create a customer, it's all done step by step. It's a 4-step process. You're getting basic customer information, then you're getting job information, which is tied into the contract that you're selecting. So it creates all those jobs for you. We'll come back to that. But then the next step is the payment information, where we're collecting and saving a token for that payment information so that it can be charged ongoing, which is another big difference between pest control versus other industries. Is because it is ongoing, you need to be able to save that payment information, and you need to be able to do it securely, not floating around on paper like we talked about before. And then, of course, the finalization of the back and forth of the digital contract is kind of the 4th step of reviewing everything. Okay, here's everything we talked about. It's a dynamic contract. It's pulling in all the services that we have talked about in the agreement, and here they are. Now you can sign this. And then once you do that, that's the customer creation process as a whole. But once you push submit, it actually creates everything in the background. So it creates all the invoices for the contract. It creates all the jobs for the contract. And then what that allows for in the future is advanced routing. So another major challenge in pest control is getting jobs done in a very efficient manner, right? If you have one truck that's doing 15 stops a day, putting those in an order that minimizes drive time. A lot of people don't understand this, but it is a very advanced computing challenge to put those in a good order. And one of the things that we do is because we have all those jobs created out for the contract, we're able to look out and start to put those in a best order. And then it can be refined over time. And we have some of the best automated routing out there where it drives down your drive time to typically far better than a human can ever make it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so really just a culmination of being very knowledgeable about the specific pain points in the pest control industry and creating a tool that really bridges together the solutions to all of those problems in a one-stop shop kind of one-window approach type format, which is always better, for sure.
Yeah.
My dad is a plumber, and he's had his own company for a long time, and the pain point of payment and acquiring payment after the work's already been done is, it really honestly, I can remember 20 years ago, it was the biggest issue, and it still is his biggest issue today.
Yeah.
So it's interesting the applicability of a lot of other service-based issues as well.
Yeah.
It's always better to be more niched, but when you can conceptualize the future of Pocomos, and we usually talk about this at the end, but I'm just curious, is there any thought around adding additional use cases or adding additional ICP or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, things are changing quite a bit in the industry. Our current near-term roadmap, we're integrating more tools for termite, which we actually have some upcoming plans for termite that we believe again will change the game. I mean, termite is the difficulty with termite in pest control is that it's almost like a different business altogether. Like the flow is different and the process is different and customers, areas and demographics are different. But typically people that want pest control and then need termite service, they go to their pest control person, of course. So anyway, that's all to say that, yeah, we have some things that we believe are going to definitely change that arena. And so that's still within pest control, but we also have a lot of other industries that have liked Pocomos, but typically those are all going to be services, home services that on a regular basis. So we have some that do dog poop removal, which is kind of funny. I don't know why, but we have a few companies that use our software that do dog poop removal, and then mobile detailing. We have a few of those. What they're typically doing with those is they're doing mobile detailing on a quarterly basis, right? So it's a little bit different model there too.
So you already have these peripheral industries, I'll say, different but similar with regards to kind of day to day already on your app and using your service there. Hey, and with regards to customer success, are you seeing similar results and similar feedback from the users that are outside of the pest control circles?
Yeah, obviously, I would say we get more requests from those companies that are not in the pest control vein, and we have to take those with a grain of salt because we are committed first and foremost to pest control. That's where we have probably 85% of our companies are pest control companies, but whenever we can and whenever we feel like it makes sense for everybody, we have implemented those features. In fact, the latest was probably a big estimates module, which we added. There was specifically for this one, it was a blinds company. They do blind installation, but they have a similar problem with routing where they try to do probably 8 stops a day for the blinds, and they can't really find software that can route very well, but that is something that we do exceptionally well. So with them, they requested estimates, and that's something that also comes in handy across other industries, which is what we look at. Where estimates aren't typically done for general pest control, they are done for termites. You go and you expect an estimate on what it's going to take to fix a property or whatever the case might be that way. And then same with a lot of other home service industries are going to require somebody to go out, make an assessment and give an estimate. And so we've made that pretty robust at this point. A lot of customization really allows you to make some fancy estimates, as it were.
I think that there is some very clear shining beacons of what you're doing well and where your experience in pest control and the intimate knowledge you have of the day-to-day issues and inefficiencies, I'm sure have contributed very well to your growth success with Pocomos. But beyond those pieces from 2012 to present, that's a long time, which is awesome. I think a lot of companies, specifically in the tech space, at least on the show, we've had a lot of people in that 0 to 5 year benchmark. Being in the game a bit longer, when have you experienced the most growth successfully, sustainably, effectively, and beyond having really great product market fit, great customer support, what do you attribute that success to? I know that's a kind of reductive question, but I'm curious, in your mind, when you picture the most growth success you've had, what are the first few things that come to mind?
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind taking a step back to the path that we chose to take, which is a little bit different than a typical technology path. Typically, technology is you plan on no profits for 5 years. And typically that involves taking on a lot of investment. And that's not what we did initially. We really have bootstrapped pretty hard from the beginning until now. We really haven't taken on a lot of money. We've focused on what people were looking for and building those features and getting customers that way. So it's been a very responsive way to build a company, which I highly recommend. I've seen a lot of people go down the path of, I'm going to take on, $2 million from a PE firm or something and try to build what people are looking for, build it fast, and end up losing their shirts because of it. I mean, it's really hard to gather that knowledge of what people are looking for so that you're sure that your software is a good product market fit. But as you do it slowly and you're talking with your customers on a daily basis, figuring out what they need, what they're missing, what is actually what they need, that makes a big difference. One, for growing slowly and making sure that you have that fit, but then also for making sure that you don't overbuild and build things that people don't want, right? Like that's what we see. A lot of times people waste all their money building things that they think that they want. In fact, there are actually still features that we thought were going to be amazing features we have not built, because what happens in a lot of cases is we present these features like, hey, here's a cool idea. What if we did this? And they'll come back to us and say, that doesn't really work because of X, Y, or Z. And it wasn't something that we thought of. Or they're just committed to their own process, right? I can't tell you how many owners I've met of pest control companies who have told me that their secret sauce is the way it has to be, and nobody can dissuade them from that because it was a painful lesson that they learned early on in their business. And I'm telling you, we can come in with a way more efficient process. Like, hey, we thought through the entire process. It's going to be way more efficient if you do it this way. And they're like, no, that won't work. Rebuild it the way that will match our process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you definitely don't want to chase your tail doing that too much, for sure. Make sure you build what they're looking for.
That's an interesting kind of point you bring up. I'm wondering, beyond that challenge that you identified, being in such a historic industry and dealing with folks that, like yourself, honestly, who have been in pest control for ever and a long time, and maybe even generationally, I can see that a lot of kind of folks working for their parents or something like that for their pest control companies.
Sure.
Does that present any unique scaling challenges? Because I think, like you just described, coming at them being like, hey, what about this? And they're like, well, we've been doing it this way for 30 years. So
Yes.
we're not changing, not today, not because you said so. So we're in Alberta, so we have a large agricultural sector. I believe Utah does as well. And one of our ICPs is the agriculture sector. I had to do a lot of talking to and connecting with folks in that industry. And another one where people love their routines. They love their processes.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality,
Yeah.
even if there are clear efficiencies that could save them time and money. And so how have you dealt with that challenge that
Yes.
I'm sure is forever and ongoing and
It
doesn't
is.
disappear when you hit the 10-year mark or anything like that?
No, you're absolutely right. And that is, it is a challenge, especially it's a challenge across technology as a whole, I would say. When you
Mhm.
present a new option, a lot of times people, one, they don't recognize it when you release it. I got off a call this morning with a longtime Pocomos client, and he's been working with other pest control companies recently because he has a product that he's trying to get out there. And basically what he was saying is I can't believe the number of people that use your software that don't use the features that you created 10 years ago. And we feel the same way. I mean, there's a lot of things that we've come out with, and just adoption is really slow. And, we do a lot to try to help with that as far as education, ongoing education, in the app education, that type of thing. But people that are set in their ways, it's really hard for them to change. And it actually presents a challenge for attrition, actually, is what we run into. Is people, it's happened at least 4 or 5 times where a company will come to us and say, hey, we're leaving, we're going to go to a different software. And we're like, oh, no, why would you leave? And they're like, oh, they have these features that are X, Y, and Z. And then we explain to them, oh, we actually have those built. They have been built for years. Here's how you do that. And it's like, oh, well, now we already told you that we're leaving. It makes for a weird relationship, shall we say.
Yeah, definitely. So when you are able to get those folks to adopt these new tools, is that an upsell opportunity for you? Does their subscription level change? Or is it a pay to play with those additional services? Or is it sometimes yes, sometimes no?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. We are notorious for not charging enough for our software. It's very common in the industry for most people, as they create a new feature, they add a price for it. We kind of have all-in pricing, and then there's a few other things that just have to be charged separately. So we do try to build all that into pricing so that adoption is encouraged, right? You're already paying for this, just go for it, use it. But it's an ongoing challenge for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so when you run into these points of stagnation with adopting new functions and applications within the interface. Um, has that impacted your scalability? Or is it a matter of, we know that folks are slow to adopt these new aspects and services that we roll out, so we don't put all of our eggs in that basket when we conceptualize what our next phase of growth is going to be? Where do you kind of fall with regards to the importance and the priority that you put on that piece?
Sure. In the past, I would say it has burned us and prevented us from scaling as much as we could have because of increased attrition. We kind of saw increases in attrition, customers leaving us, and looking into those causes. Oftentimes, it was that an education problem. They didn't understand that the features are there. They didn't know how to use them or whatever that way. And that's still going to happen no matter what you do. But we have done a lot more to be proactive about it. So even if we don't hear from customers, like we have in-app chat, and that's typically how people reach out for support. We're very responsive on that and always have been. But what we've learned is that we need to be even more proactive. We need to reach out to them at least once a quarter and just ask them if they're stuck on anything, if they're need help with anything. And that call, oftentimes they don't tell us anything, but just us reaching out lets them know that we're there for if they need any problems, or if they're looking for a feature that doesn't exist, they can reach out any way that they would like to, I guess.
You mentioned that competition piece being a bit of a growing pain for you guys. And that blends into the conversation we've had about that slow adoption of those new features and not being aware of the totality of the offering. So beyond that case study with regards to the broader topic of competition, how has, I guess, the saturation in the pest control SaaS vertical impacted you over the years?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely something that's been, I mentioned we took the different path from the PE funds, but that's what we've noticed a lot of our competitors doing, is taking on a lot of money. And then what we've noticed happens is they build a lot of features, but mostly they put money into sales after getting a bunch of money. And we have lost, like I say, a bunch of customers to those type of salespeople that are being funded by PE funds and are saying whatever to get the sale. We've seen that quite a bit, and that has caused us some pain in the past. But typically, what we've seen happen is a fall off in support shortly thereafter. Anytime that they go through a purchase, they lose support knowledge and support people, and support degrades significantly. And most of our competitors have actually been through 3 or 4 changes. I mean, there were 3 or 4 of us that came into the industry right about the same time, which speaks to the need in the industry at that time. None of us knew of each other, and we all entered the industry about the same time. But most of our competitors have been bought and sold at least 2 or 3 times in that same period. And at this point, customer support is actually one of the biggest complaints that people can complain about, and reasons for switching to Pocomos because they've heard about Pocomos support.
So kind of both a challenge and an advantage.
Yeah.
In an interesting way, where you're able to come into the conversation with regards to the shortcomings of other clients. It's such an important piece that I think it's so hard to conceptualize and quantify with regards to what does scaling sustainably mean, because it's different for everybody. Yeah. When you think about your future growth with regard to Pocomos and making sure that it's sustainable and making sure you're not falling into that same trap that your competitors are falling into, what strategies do you have in place to make sure that doesn't happen to you guys as well?
Well, that's something we talk about on a monthly basis, and it's definitely a challenge. So far, I mean, the best we have is we definitely have a robust knowledge and literal digital knowledge base that new employees can learn from, and even new customers. We've got hundreds of articles on how to do anything in the software, and we spend a lot of time updating those every month. And so that's definitely what's been a big win for us. Is it took a lot of work to put that all together, and it takes a lot of work to maintain it. Where it's there and it is maintained, it helps anybody that's new to the software really get up to speed quickly. And then the other advantage that I would say that we have done probably better than any of our competitors, as far as I'm aware, is AI sponsored or AI backed support. So when they reach out via the chat, there's in-app chat, that's the support chat. And if they reach out via that chat, it automatically says, hey, we're going to get somebody for you. Also, here are some articles that might help. It gives them 2 or 3 articles that are related to the topic that they're asking about, which we find in about 20% of cases, that article will answer the question that they were going to ask the support person in the first place. And so they end up, closing the conversation before they ever need to talk to a real human. So that's been helpful as far as reducing the load of support and still getting people, all the help that they were looking for.
Yeah, interesting. It's the careful consideration, the implementation of those AI efficiencies as well, and making sure you're not putting them in places where they're not needed and making sure they actually enhance, I think, the level of customer support as opposed to aiding in more confusion. Outside of those pieces, I'm curious to look at where those other growing pains have been for you guys. I think that you've overcame so much since you've just been to market and succeeding and being able to remain afloat and grow over 10 years. Where have those growing pains reared their heads? And I'm curious, since you have such a wealth of experience, have you noticed a pattern? Like maybe it's seasonality, maybe it's tied to some other phenomena that happens in the world. What have you noticed with regards to when you've had those leaner years or months versus had a lot of success?
Well, I'll start with your last question, which is seasonality, which is definitely something we learned pretty early on, is that this is a very seasonal business, just like our pest control companies are. Even any of the home services, they're all going to be pretty seasonal. We reach out to people all year round, but starting in April, like mid-April through about mid-September, nobody is really willing to switch. They'll maybe talk to you for a few minutes, but when it comes time to like, oh, let's actually move your information and change your processes, they all kind of say the same thing. Talk to me in the fall, talk to me in the fall, talk to me in the fall. And that's just because they're so busy themselves trying to do the services that they're offering during the summertime. So that's definitely one part of it. And then as far as scaling, I mean, it's always like, I would say scaling is always a challenge because everybody wants to grow as much as they can, as fast as they can, right? But for us, some of the challenges of scaling, I would say probably one, because we haven't taken the high PE route where we've taken on a lot of debt and or given up equity. Money is always something that we have to watch carefully. We spend our money very wisely. And if we had a lot more money, there are a lot more things that we would build. And we think we could change the game much faster. So definitely, like, that's always, I think that's for most companies, unless you do get a huge investment and go down that route. That also comes with strings attached though. And people don't understand that. I mean, when you take on money and a PE firm, there are, very strict guidelines and strict quotas that you have to hit, or heavy penalties if you don't. And even though that is the route we chose, and that's kind of where we've gone and we've been able to do that, it's a limiting factor. I mean, there's a lot of things that we would love to do that we just can't afford to do. Then I would say another one has been technology, resource management. There was a time there, especially in like 2018 to 2021, probably. It was really hard to find developers. We lost some of our best developers to these enormous salaries from other huge PE fund-backed companies that were offering double and triple what we were able to pay them. And while we wanted to keep them desperately, in many cases, we had to let them go to make the big bucks. But that was a huge challenge for us because one is losing that development talent for the future, but with many cases, those developers had been with us pretty well from the beginning. And so they're not just losing the ability to develop, but also losing the mental held history of why things are the way they are. And so that was a major setback. We lost a couple guys that were pretty core to the tech team in that time frame, and that set us back a lot, several years before we were able to really get to a full dev speed like we wanted.
And as you do combat those either stagnations or scaling challenges on the development side, what is that paired with from like a business development and operation side? How are you balancing like new client acquisition? Let's say you have a huge wave of new users. Obviously, there's some development requirements once that happens, and that maintenance and the special attention paid to making sure that technology is operating consistently. How is that paired with behaviors on more on the day-to-day operations, whether that be, does that impact really anything with regards to top of funnel? Does that really strain your maybe sales and marketing team or anything like that? Like, how do you effectively strike that balance as you move through just time and space?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you how we do, and I'll tell you how I wish we could if we had an unlimited budget. We have, and this is a challenge with any technology company, but there's a whole host of maintenance things that need to be done that effectively give you no sales and marketing benefit, right? Like you mentioned, if you're getting on a new client that has a bunch of locations or something that way, we'll definitely prioritize those things that they need, that they feel like might be missing in the software, build those out quickly to help sales and marketing out. But at least 30% of the work that needs to be done, maybe 40% of the work that needs to be done, are updates to whatever it might be, which are no functional change in the software. When you think about that, that's like near 50% of the work nobody sees, nobody cares about. nobody wants you to do it. At least they don't feel like they want you to do it until it doesn't get done. And then it causes, major issues. They say, why didn't you do it in the first
Why
place?
isn't it done? Yeah.
Because we did what you said you wanted us to do. So it is a very, very much something that has to be monitored and something that people just won't ever understand. And those are security updates. Those are, system updates. Those are, server maintenance things. There's just a whole host of those
glamorous pieces that happen and nobody notices.
Yep. Yep. But they're what makes the difference. If you don't get done, then you end up with catastrophic issues in a relatively short period of time. I think a lot of people that are not in software think that you just build something and then it just exists and you don't have to really touch it too much. It just will do what it's doing until you change it, which is just not the case. I mean, and maybe it was the case at some point back in the 60s, maybe through the 90s, who knows, maybe that actually is how it worked. But with the interconnectivity of software the way that it is in our day and age, everything breaks in a relatively quick time frame if you don't continue to do that maintenance. On our team, we kind of have a rover. So we are typically focused on bug fixes and then new features and then a rover. So we have a team that's working on those bug fixes because we're hearing about them from clients and, they need updates. And there's a coming urgency from the customer that makes us so that we do not forget about those things, right? And then same with those new features, we're hearing from marketing and sales, hey, we want these features. Well, there's an urgency there, but our rover developer only focuses on those less glamorous things that you mentioned. So it's all server updates, it's all architecture, things of that nature. Occasionally we will kind of migrate that role and switch it off because even the developers are less enthused about those type of updates, typically prefer to work on new features and cool things that way as well. But having somebody who's dedicated to that is invaluable and makes sure that we don't lose track of those things that need to be updated. But as we scale the team, the plan actually is to have 3 separate teams, those 3 areas that I mentioned. So one being new features, sales and marketing is helping drive that conversation. Another team being bug fixes and updates to the current features. And then another team separately, so updates to that people are asking for, current users are asking for, and then updates separately as the less glamorous things. So 3 teams, 1 or 2 developers on each team, and handling things in their focus so that all things are covered and you continue forward at a metered pace.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's interesting having a development aspect on each of those teams to allow them to operate a bit more autonomously is the hope. And yeah, I think that's an organization within your current structure that is very unique. A lot of people, when they conceptualize their separate sectors, they're saying everyone's going to be doing something completely different, as opposed to these people are focusing on this aspect of the business, and that can necessitate a bunch of different experts to be working closely. For the new development team with your more top of funnel activities, how are you balancing making sure your funnel's full with those new developments on the tech side while also all being in the same team?
Yeah, there's actually even an internal struggle in between that focus, right? I mean, because we have a list of features we'd like to build as long as the day is long, right? But what takes precedence typically are new clients that are coming in that are asking for features. And so they might be coming from a piece of software that has some feature that they like, and we will prioritize that to get them in and help them get across the finish line from a sales standpoint. I would say that is the prioritization. We will focus on the features that we have and would like to build, unless there's somebody that comes in and says, hey, I would like to use your software, but I need X, Y, or Z, and we will focus on X, Y, or Z to make sure that they have what they need to get over to the software.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's say this is a fictitious scenario. Let's say you have 2 people coming to you with hey, I would love to have this feature. One of them is a client you've had for years, and the other one is a new client. And the build for both features would be equally as simple or complex. Would the priority be given to the new client in that case? Or would it be let's try to do both equally?
Yeah, we would probably divide and conquer on that, I would say. So we have a couple developers, we'd probably pull somebody off another team to complete the 2. If they're equal in priority for both of them, we definitely try. We are hyper committed to support and keeping our current customers happy. I mean, we also like new customers. So
yeah, it's hard. It's a hard one.
That is a tough one.
Both. Yeah.
Yes, both. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
And
all of the
that's,
above for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, and we would get them both done. We're pretty, like I say, we ran through a period there where we were struggling to get things out just because of the development capabilities, but we're back to full speed and we're able to put things out at a pretty quick rate. In fact, just this, not that specific scenario, but we had a client that came in that was asking for those estimates. That was probably 6 months ago, and they said, "Oh, you don't have estimates. We're not going to use the software." And we said, "Well, we can build estimates. Don't worry about that." They said, "Well, we've heard people tell us that before, so we'll believe it when we see it." And they were a big enough client that we said, "You know what? We will prove it to them." And we prioritized that, got it done in 3 weeks, and it was robust and beautiful and better than what they had. And they were shocked, to say
Yeah.
the
They
least.
said, I really didn't believe you. Yeah.
Yeah, they literally told us, "Yeah, we did not believe you're going to get
Yeah.
done anytime
It's a
soon."
good thing to be underestimated. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And I know we're coming up on the end here, but I want to quickly circle back to that competition piece. I'm curious how differentiating yourself in a crowded market, how that looks from a client acquisition standpoint when you are dealing with these other offerings that have similar or maybe even additional features that you don't have, or when you are competing with these larger pest control SaaS companies that have similar offerings. What are you doing to keep the top of funnel nice and healthy and full while also trying to combat and make your, like, no, I don't want to say combat the competition, but make your voice and your brand stand out?
Yeah. Well, that is an ongoing challenge. There's no question about that. But we try to focus in. Well, I'll give you an example of why it's a challenge, actually, is that, I mean, I would say our route optimization is maybe the best in the industry, but it's super, like, one, everybody says that. Literally everybody, every company says that. And so it becomes white noise. Even if it is true, it's also not super easy for them to figure that out, right? They actually have to use the software for 6 months before they're like, "Oh, wow, this actually is way better. And we spend way less time doing this than we did on our old software." So that, and that's a similar challenge with most of the features. So even though we have a lot of features that are really unique, and even if they're not unique, they are better built than our competitors. It's hard to get that across because that's literally what everybody says. So we tend, I think, from our sales standpoint, to focus on whatever their pain points are with their current software, and we've allowed that to guide our sales approaches, which currently, like I say, I think support is actually a huge issue across all of the industry, and that's a major pain point. I put into ChatGPT, "Hey, look at all the owners' forums for the pest control owners and give me the pain points or what the feedback is." And support time is a major issue. They're 2 to 4 hours, 3 days to a week as far as a response time, like just a response from support. And it kind of speaks to why, even though everybody says they have great support, it is a differentiator for us. We typically respond within 3 to 5 minutes. And that's a huge difference between us and our competitors. And it's a major pain point for most of the pest control companies. And in the past, we were the first ones to do integrated door-to-door tools, like I mentioned before. That was a huge differentiator. And
Yeah. It's a multi-pronged challenge of making sure that both your offering and your service is superior, but also ensuring that even if others kind of come back under and copycat a bit in these respects, that
yeah,
your authority is and your branding is so strong that it doesn't matter. I think that a common issue that founders fall into is oversimplifying that phenomenon, thinking it's linear when it's really not. There's a lot that goes into that, and they all have to
yeah,
be working in tandem at the same time, effectively in
yeah,
equilibrium, and that's a hard thing to execute and maintain.
yeah.
Yeah. Let folks at home know where to find you, where to reach out if they can find pest removal companies that do utilize Pocomos from a user client perspective as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're easy to find at Pocomos.com. And we probably should have started with this, but Pocomos is pest control management software. We took the first letters and put O's in between it to get a word. Pocomos.com is definitely where you'll find a lot of that information. You can see the features. You can even, if you're not a pest control company, but a consumer, you can take a look at the customer portal, which is pretty handy. We are definitely building a lot of cool things. We have been in a mode where we've been building a lot of features, like we talked about, that are customer features that people have been looking for. They've come to us looking for. Right now, we've actually been shifting gears more back towards that list that we want to build, which is integrating AI and changing processes and updating and becoming much more efficient. And so, yeah, we have a bunch of cool things that are coming down the pipe. A lot of them are focused on AI, and we believe we're about to change the game again.
Awesome. What a great way to end it off, Scott. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to the folks at home for tuning in and watching this episode. Please be sure to follow Scott on LinkedIn, follow Pocomos, follow Freshly Pressed, both on YouTube and LinkedIn. We post episodes bi-weekly here as well. And thank you, Scott, again so much for joining us today. It was so great. And I've loved getting to know you and your company and what you guys do in the pest control space. So thanks so much for being a part of this today.
Yeah, thank you for having us on, Gabrielle. It was great, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Thank you for listening to the CTRL ALT GAB podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one.